Democrats are still grappling with their sweeping election laws, and they're looking at how they engage with voters, especially through media like podcasts and YouTube. Many have criticized Vice President Harris for not agreeing to conditions of the invitation to speak to Joe Rogan's massive podcast audience. Progressive Senator Bernie Sanders saying, quote, "You're going to have an argument with Rogan, agree with him, disagree with him, but what's the problem with going on those shows? It's hard for me to understand that." So let's bring in Kris Ruby. She is the CEO of Ruby Media, media group, that is. So, all right, Kris. So was VP Harris not doing the Joe Rogan podcast the single biggest mistake of her campaign?
I think there were many mistakes of her campaign, but this was certainly one of them, if not the nail in the coffin in her campaign. And the problem is that if you don't evolve with new media strategies, failure to adapt to new media strategies like podcasting, like YouTube, like different forms of social media, Reels or Instagram Lives or even TikTok, if you don't do that, you will become extinct. That is exactly what we saw happen here with the campaign. Now, I get it.
Well, she did do some. Let me just jump in. She did do some podcasts. I know she talked to Charlemagne the God and others. Go ahead.
Yes, she did do some, but she didn't necessarily push herself to do the other types of podcasts where she could have picked up voters and she could have picked up support from people who weren't necessarily her main base that she was attracting or trying to attract.
Right. I understand what you're saying. I was just reading in the Times of India, and they're reporting that she passed on the Joe Rogan offer because over concerns over backlash from progressives.
There's no reason. Why would she get backlash for that? I mean, come on. This is part of the problem. In an age where how we receive, how we get our information is changing because of generative AI, the only thing that is going to make you real in the future is being yourself. And that could mean talking for 3 hours on the Joe Rogan podcast. And so we have to put ourselves out there if we want support from people on all sides. If you want to change hearts and minds, if you want to win hearts and minds, you have to do media of people on the other side.
Okay. So, we played that clip from Congresswoman AOC, and she's asking, where are you getting your information from? Who are you listening to? So once the Democratic Party as a whole finds those answers, what do you think they'll learn?
I don't think they're going to learn much because I don't think this is really news. I'm shocked they're even asking this question because how do they not know? I mean, these podcasts are not, they didn't come out of nowhere. These are not 2 months old. This has been going on for years. The growth of this alternative media class, specifically, at least on the right, this has been trending in an upwards trajectory. So I think the issue here is not what podcasts or what shows, but rather, why are you asking this question now? Why has it taken years to ask this question and to finally realize that this is here to stay? Media is changing and the old way is not working anymore.
So on that note, let's take a look at a 2024 Pew Research poll asking how Americans prefer to get their news. Digital devices, 58%, television, 32%, radio, 6%, print, 4%. So, how is this? We already see how it's currently reshaping the political landscape, and how do you think that will continue to impact the political landscape moving forward?
Well, I think that statistic there for digital devices is extremely important, and that is going to shape the future landscape in terms of elections and winning the narrative on social media. You have to be willing to use a digital-first strategy, whether that is public relations or different types of social media. Public relations is fundamentally about the art of interfacing and navigating with the public. That means you have to try different things. And so one of those things is obviously going to be a digital-first strategy, being more digitally savvy and not being afraid of what your staffers or what aides are going to say. Sometimes you just have to push back. And I think that was really the mistake that we saw in terms of this election and part of the reason why she lost.
And finally, some people criticize President-elect Trump for having what they called a bro fest. But that proved to be a winning strategy. So what can the Democrats learn from that approach?
Well, I certainly understand that criticism. One, you probably need more women in podcasting to even that out. I would say that as a woman on the right, I think that's a fair statement to make. What Democrats can learn is that you need to be in the game to compete, right? You can't be sitting on the sidelines saying, oh, let's talk about what are you watching? What are you listening? Learning that digital first is the way to go now. When we've known that for at least 5 to 10 years. So you need to compete. You need to not just be like, let's talk about the strategy, but actually execute and deploy. The mistake the Democrats make is they just want to plan, and not actually be in the game. They don't want to take those risks. They don't want to experiment. Trump was willing to experiment. Trump is willing to dress up at McDonald's. He's willing to do different stunts with a garbage truck. I did not see the other campaign doing any of those things. And those are things that ultimately made him look like another American citizen. And that's what people want to see. You have to put yourself out there. If you don't do that, you come across as cold. You come across as not one of them. You come across as elite. And people don't want that. It just doesn't work anymore. And that's what we've seen.
Okay. Kris Ruby, thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.